The committee will return to order. Thank you, Rep. Wozniak. Next, we'll have testimony from Representative Cam Cavitt and his Legislative Director, Adam Hagedorn, on House Bill 5514.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on House Bill 5514. I especially want to thank Chair Schmaltz and Representative Song for co-sponsoring this bill and their leadership on this issue. I'll keep my testimony brief because I believe the survivors' stories speak for themselves. I'm honored to have some here today testifying in person and many others who have submitted written testimony for the record. This bill protects children during transport to residential child care programs by prohibiting the use of blindfolds, handcuffs, and other restraints except in true emergencies where there is immediate risk of harm either to themselves or others and no safer option is available. The H1 substitute strengthened this bill by defining what a youth residential treatment program is and prohibits pickups between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. This legislation ensures children are treated with dignity while still allowing limited trained use of restraints only when necessary. I respectfully ask for your support and welcome any questions.
Is there any questions? Rep. Song?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony, Representative, and for bringing forward this important bill. My question is, do we know of any instances, like how many a year, is that reported on the use of restraint?
I don't.
So it's unregulated, so they don't really track how many transport companies there are. A lot of the issue is, as you'll hear later, it's from one state to another state. So Michigan doesn't have many of these youth residential facilities in the state, but a lot of times kids from Michigan are taken to other states. So it's hard to track that because the company might reside out of state or vice versa. People are a lot of people go to Utah. I mean, it's the miles that these kids endure are pretty insane. So it's hard to track that.
And if I may, just a follow-up question. So once they leave the state, I mean, this bill is just for our state, right? So once they leave the border, it's not our responsibility anymore. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, that could be true, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Rep. Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Seems like a worthy effort here and worthy bill. Can you help us understand, like, how did this come to your awareness and
Right.
what kind of situations warrant this?
Thanks, Rep. Johnson. We had a constituent in our area who child had, a 12-year-old had ran away twice, and the parents were having trouble managing him, and they found this treatment center in Missouri. Well, they hired a company to transport him to Missouri, and in the course of that, they leg shackled him and handcuffed him and drove him all the way to Missouri like that. So it's a 12-year-old boy who's not in the criminal justice system. He's just needed some special attention. Thank you.
Yes, I think this is such an important bill and legislation because these young people are already facing traumatic situations, and I think it's really important that we make sure that we don't make it worse
Thank
by
you,
having these restraints. And we have a couple more questions. Rep. Wozniak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rep, do you know if this bill includes, and this might be an obvious answer, seatbelts on the transportation vehicle?
No, I'd imagine they have to be seat belted. That's not in the law, sir.
Okay, just clarification.
Yeah.
Rep. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that I answered my own question. I just wanted to make sure that in case of the juvenile harming themselves or someone else, if this bill did allow for soft wrist restraints.
It does. That's correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Representative, and Adam, for your testimony. And we have some people who want to talk about this bill. Next, we'll hear a pre-recorded testimony from media personality and advocate Paris Hilton.
For a second.
Hello, I'm Paris Hilton. Hello, I'm Paris Hilton. I wish I could be there in person with you today, but I'm grateful for the chance to share my story with you. When I was 16 years old, I was taken from my bed in the middle of the night by two men I had never seen before. They told me I could go the easy way or the hard way, but there was no choice. I was handcuffed, carried out of my home while I screamed for help. I truly believed I was being kidnapped. My parents had been told this was the only way to get me help. They believed they were making the best decision for my safety. But I promise there is nothing therapeutic about being woken up by strangers, physically restrained, and taken across the country against your will. That moment changed my life forever. My sense of safety was never the same. Unfortunately, this is happening to hundreds of thousands of youth across the country. Michigan has taken important steps to strengthen protections inside residential treatment facilities, but the physical transport to a facility remains largely unregulated. This bill closes that gap. When a child is entering treatment, they are often already in crisis. They deserve to feel safe. They deserve dignity. They deserve to be treated with humanity. I couldn't speak up when this happened to me, but I'm so proud to use my voice for children today. I urge you to support HB 5514 and help protect vulnerable youth across Michigan. Thank you for your commitment to protecting children.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the testimony from Paris Hilton to bring light to this issue, because it has been an issue around the country. So next we have Caroline Cole from 1111 Media testifying virtually.
Thank you, Chair Schmalz, Vice Chair Wozniak, and members of the House Families and Veterans Committee. Thank you so much for letting us speak with you all today. My name is Caroline Cole, and I am the Strategic Advocacy Lead for Paris Hilton's organization, 1111 Media Impact. For the last several years, we have been leading policy reforms across the nation related to youth residential treatment and, of course, also the transportation of kids into residential treatment. And really a key experience for many of the people that we serve is the transport to treatment, which you will hear more from some advocates who are with you there in person today. And what you will hear is that so many of these young people are left with permanent emotional and sometimes physical scars from their transport. Similar to Paris and the advocate speaking today, I too was transported to a residential facility when I was a teenager, and that moment will never leave my mind. I vividly remember my mom standing in the hallway in tears as the transporters kicked in my bedroom door and bombarded my room with handcuffs in hand. I was only 14 years old, and by no means was I combative or aggressive. I truly was terrified. And my mom later would admit that she was told that this was the best way to get me the help that I needed, but she didn't fully realize everything that it entailed. She really trusted the professionals and trusted what they were telling her to do, as I think so many families are put in that position when they have a child that they're concerned about, or a child that has that is in need of some help, in need of some treatment. And so, she also told me that this is just a guilt that she lives with today. I also want to share, I spoke with a mom recently, just a couple of weeks ago, who, after her son's suicide, started speaking out about these issues and her family's story. And she told me that what her son went through, starting with the transport, will unfortunately haunt her for the rest of her life. This is not a new issue, and it's been going on for quite some time. You'll hear in some of the testimonies today that this has actually been going on for decades in Michigan. just last week, we had a 16-year-old Michigan girl reach out to our team, and she shared the same exact story of how she was transported to treatment and how terrifying that was. Unfortunately, she came down with the flu and she was not able to be there with you in person, but she did submit written testimony. And really, the bottom line is that these practices are archaic. Families and their children are ultimately paying the price, and it's a cost that oftentimes we're unaware of until much later down the road. HB 5514 will create much needed safeguards to ensure that there is some kind of structure when these transports are taking place. I urge the committee to vote favorably for this bill, and thank you so much for allowing us to share our stories with you today. We want to prevent any other family or child from living through what we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And, when parents call these companies, it doesn't seem like they're getting the correct information of what they're really going to do. So that needs to change. Very much. I think we do have a question from Rep Pavlov.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm currently working on a bill to prevent positional asphyxiation for bouncers that would require special training for them. Will the transporters of children need to have special training to deal with children who might be disinclined to be transported?
Would you like for me to answer that question?
Did you hear?
Yes. Could you answer that, please?
Yes, I apologize. There was a bit of an echo, and so I couldn't hear. I believe that should be a requirement, yes. I think it's difficult for so many staff of these residential facilities and also transporters who are put in these positions with children, whether it be, certain behaviors or, high stress situations where they're expected to respond in a calm demeanor. And I think sometimes that can go against our natural human inclination when there's a high stress situation. And so I do believe that training should be required. However, this bill is really the first step. There are states, just to give kind of a 30,000 foot view, there are states right now across the nation that are just starting to create some kind of registration with the state and therefore, creating a certain level of accountability or recourse for people who do have an incident with these kinds of service providers. And so I believe that it's really crucial to first build that infrastructure, and we can go back and fine tune and create other requirements. But right now, considering that there's really not any kind of infrastructure to track who's doing business in Michigan, who's taking kids from Michigan, I believe that we really need to start there.
One of the, one of the challenges we are facing is who would provide that training and who would pay for it?
I think that's a great question. And, I believe just as in any other profession, if I wanted to become a doctor or I wanted to become a teacher, I would be responsible for making sure that I fund my education to fulfill those requirements. So I think that some of that responsibility needs to be put back on the providers to make sure that they are truly equipped to do the job and the work that they say that they're going to do. And I'm sorry, there was one other part of your question that I was going to answer. And it's just escaping me. I apologize.
I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
We have another question, Rep Burns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who my question would be best suited for. It might be best suited for our bill sponsor, but I'll just pose the question to the room. So based on some of the conversation, and Chair, to your point around the fact that a lot of parents or guardians don't seem to be fully aware or briefed on what this actual process of transporting looks like and how egregious it can be, I would say. My question would be, have any of these companies ever been sued, either in Michigan or any other states? Because again, it seems like some parents or guardians, at least, are not fully aware of what this entails and how traumatizing it can be for their children. So just curious what that has looked like, if anything, at this point. Thank you.
The parents sign off on the rights when they sign up, like a disclaimer that holds them harmless.
Okay, so it sounds like there's really not room for a lawsuit then for most of these companies based on the disclaimer.
There's not a lot of legal recourse.
Okay. Okay, interesting. And I'll just repeat that if I can, Rep, since you weren't mic'd up at that time. It sounds like parents or guardians tend to sign a disclaimer that holds the company harmless, and then the parent's right to sue is basically null and void at that point in time, correct? Okay, okay.
So again,
Thank you.
it sounds like what I was talking about before, the parents aren't fully aware sometimes of, and you can understand a parent's position too, they don't know what to do, but they're just not fully aware of what these companies are doing, and that needs to change, so.
Right.
Thank you. We have one more question, Rep Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the bill sponsor, Representative Cavitt. Right here, Rep Thompson. It looks like there isn't going to be a substitute discussing boot camps in military schools. My question is, how much involvement did you have with boot camps when you were doing this legislation? Because I know there are boot camps in Michigan. I know personally I sent my son to one when he was 13 or 14 and was being delinquent and incorrigible. I know we took him to the boot camp, but I do remember after the weekend that if something had happened where he no longer he wasn't going to school, he was doing drugs, whatever the case was, they told me that they would sit in his room and they would scare the crap out of him when he got home from school to get his act right. Would this affect any of those programs at all?
As long as they're not shackling
Okay,
through transportation, it would not.
okay.
Okay, what Rep Cavitt said was as long, it has to do with transportation and transporting, so.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I think we're done with the questions. Thank you very much for being here and for your testimony. We appreciate it. Next, we have Kira Frankowski and Elizabeth Bennett, who've been personally affected by this, and we'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for being here. Just push the red button.
Chair Schmaltz, Vice Chair Wozniak, and members of the House Families and Veterans Committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today about this important topic. My name is Kira Frankowski, and I live in the greater Ann Arbor/Ypsilanti area, also known as Pittsfield Township. I come from a family that bleeds scarlet and gray, but my husband and I have lived and loved in our beautiful state of Michigan for the last 4 years, and we're proud to call this state our home. I have personal experience within the industry that's commonly referred to as the troubled teen industry, having been taken by my parents from our home in Ohio to Utah for therapy, where I would spend the next 2 years from ages 14 through 16. It was beyond traumatizing, to say the least. With the support of my family and community, I was able to graduate high school with a high honors and earned my Bachelor of Science degree in psychology from Bowling Green State University, commuting over an hour from our home in Michigan to do so. I've also spent the last several years investing myself in our local community, as well as contributing what I can to a massive collective of survivors of these residential programs online, a countless group of people who've gone through the same or similar programs. Once I started sharing my story online, I grew a following of over 140,000 followers and have been able to hear the stories and experiences of thousands of young people who've been transported to residential treatment, many of them from Michigan. I've heard countless testimonies from individuals who experienced these private transportation companies using tactics like zip ties, weighted boots, blindfolds, and handcuffs, mechanical, physical, and chemical restraints, which is when they inject a child with a sedative, seem commonplace. From the conversations I've had with so many survivors, many of whom were taken from their beds in the middle of the night by strangers, several common threads are clear to me, like PTSD, including frequent nightmares of being kidnapped from their homes, and long-lasting detrimental effects on their familial relationships. Many of them have ultimately severed contact with their families or otherwise remain within compromised relationships, and every single one of these individuals has expressed to me a chronic sense of distrust and vulnerability. Today, I believe the ongoing relationship I have with my parents has survived in part due to the fact that they did not follow through on these transportation services. So many families are not as lucky. I want to clarify that I understand the depth and complexities that come with mental health treatment. It is vital to note that the forceful removal of a vulnerable individual from their familiar environment is not supported by scientific evidence, especially for children whose minds are still actively developing. If swift, severe action must take place for the safety of the child or their family when in crisis, it ought to be considered under a trusted organization within a regulated field. If we are, as a community, to stand for a method of treatment or even a method for arriving at said treatment, I believe it ought to be both safe and supportive of the child. My hope with passing MIHB 5514 is to provide the first of its kind regulations over the transport companies who transport children out of the state of Michigan and will offer the necessary safeguards to prevent mistreatment. I trust that my home state will consider the inherent risks involved with a largely unregulated industry and will provide the appropriate protections for our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the testimony. Elizabeth?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Schmaltz, Vice Chair Wozniak, members of the House Families and Veterans Committee, for allowing me to share my experience today. My name is Elizabeth Bennett Fawcett. I'm a proud Michigander from Ortonville in Oakland County, Michigan. I'm here to testify today in support of HB 5514 and share my experience with being transported out of our state and our country. When I was a teenager, I was transported to a therapeutic boarding school from Michigan to Mexico without my knowledge and with threat of force. 2 Mexican national women took me in a truck across the border. I was not aware I was going to Mexico, and at almost 42, I still remember the fear of my 16-year-old self as if it happened yesterday. As we crossed the border with heavily armed patrol, I screamed, begged, cried, and pleaded to stay in America. I was denied my request to talk to American Border Patrol. During the crossing point, there was no passport or identity verified. Nobody asked me who I was or that I was a child without my parents being taken to another country. They ignored my cries and pleas for help. The women rolled up the windows and off we went in the middle of the night to an unknown location. I would later learn what that place was, and what occurred there was even worse. I would spend about a month in a facility called High Impact in Tecate, Mexico, where unspeakable abuse occurred, including sexual, physical, and psychological torture. There was no therapy and no education as it was marketed to by my parents. I was denied basic needs, including nutrition, medical care, communication to my parents and American authorities, no chance to report that I was an American child forcibly taken from my home. I was not a juvenile delinquent. I was a child who had become depressed and suicidal after 3 classmates at my former school spread life-altering rumors about me and repeatedly antagonized me, telling me to kill myself. My parents made this choice because they thought they were helping me, and they had me transported because they were told this was the safest way to get me to treatment. I went into Mexico struggling to overcome bullies and came out with lifelong trauma that I fight against every day and every night. Despite this, I managed to graduate from both high school and college with honors. I've successfully raised my twin 17-year-old son. Since this experience, I feel scared to even cross borders, go on planes, go into other countries. I had a dream as a child serving my country and going on to the work for the FBI or CIA, like my grandparents, but my dreams were cut short because of this. It is difficult to be here, but it is my duty and moral obligation to speak up and shed light on what transportation companies and these programs have done and continue to do so to Michigan families. Although my experience was many years ago, this is still happening today. We hear the stories all the time. Children deserve proper and safe help for whatever issues they are facing. 26 years later, from my time, children are still being taken from their homes and transported to youth residential programs in ways that can be deeply frightening and traumatic. Many parents are told this is the safest or only way to get their child help without fully understanding how these transport practices may affect their children. Families are often encouraged to hire private transportation companies that may restrain or control children during transport, sometimes without clear safeguards or oversight. Experiences like this can leave young people feeling terrified and powerless before treatment even begins. Michigan parents and children deserve protection. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so sorry for everything that happened to you, but you are strong and brave, and for being here today and telling us your story, you're going to help a lot of other young people going through things like this. So thank you so very much, and know that we are with you, and our hearts are with you, and I'm glad that you are both doing well. I can tell just by the way you handled yourself today. We have a couple questions. So Rep Pavlov?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate your testimony. For the lady in the white sweater, I want to make sure that I heard you correctly when you said something that you were glad that your parents did not, and I can't remember what that statement was, and then I have a question.
Yes, thank you. I was just saying that I was glad that my parents did not follow through on those services. They ultimately decided to transport me themselves to the program, or to the state.
Okay, so you voluntarily went.
Correct.
Your own decision. Okay, that's what I needed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Rep Young? Or Song? Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both so much for your testimony, and I really appreciate you being here and sharing your story. I can't imagine what you've gone through, but thank you for advocating for other children who are going through it today. My question is regarding the testimony that you said you've been getting. Are you getting that from the children that were impacted or the parents? And have you received any testimony from parents or survivors about deaths and injuries that would result in hospitalization?
Yes, definitely. I would say I've heard more from the children than the parents. I have heard from both, though, and definitely I've heard many reports of especially injuries. I haven't personally interacted with anyone who experienced a death, fortunately, but I do know they exist. But certainly lots and lots of reports of mistreatment.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Rep Thompson?
Thank you. Either for you or for the sponsor of the bill, if these transportation companies contract with the facilities, would this hold the facility liable if the transportation company that they used did these things? Or is there something in the legislation that prevents the transportation companies? So it would not? It does not, actually. So then they still could. If a parent used a transport company, there's nothing that could hold that transport company liable in this legislation. If they
I mentioned earlier, they signed a disclaimer.
with these transportation companies.
Correct.
So that could possibly be something else in legislation that needs to be looked at.
Yes, Rep Cavitt answered that before. There's a disclaimer that they venture into with the company, and so that's why that's not included.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Rep. Johnson?
But for clarification, this will tighten up the guidelines that they have to work within, correct?
Well, Rep. Cavitt, I don't know if you want to talk about the regulations again that you put forth, if you want to.
They're held harmless, but this is tightening up the guidelines they have to work within.
Oh, there are no guidelines right now.
Okay, so we finally have some. Okay, that's the point.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Obviously,
Thank
they
you.
can't pick up somebody in the middle of the night anymore, you know, they can't use these restraints, so, yeah. There's a lot of regulations and guidelines that Rep. Cavitt has put in his legislation.
Shock as a treatment. That's part of the process, is to scare the living bejesus out of you.
Yes, Rep. Cavitt just said they use shock as a treatment too, and that shouldn't happen. We have a question from Rep. Burns.
Madam Chair, thank you. And thank you both for your testimony today. I think what you've experienced is harrowing and terrifying, and it shouldn't have happened to you. I want to just thank you for being here today. I do have a question, might be for either one or both of you, might be better suited to the bill sponsor, so I'll just pose it, and whoever can respond, I would appreciate it. I'm curious, as we're going through these conversations, if someone can share with us, how are these facilities licensed, and how are they funded? Are they for-profit? Because this just sounds like an actual nightmare from start to finish. So I'm just curious of some of that background of licensing and who is funding these places. What does that look like, if someone could share? Thank you.
If it's all right, I'd like to answer on behalf of that, and I'm sure, we're all familiar with this within our support system. So there is no regulation, there is no licensing. There are multiple companies, and sometime they usually come back to a group of individuals. The one I specifically went to was called High Impact, and that was from the Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs. That was ran out of Utah, and that was a for-profit facility. So my mother spent about $7,000 for about a month.
Okay. 7,000, I apologize.
About
7,000.
7,000 back in 2000, I should say. So, and so they collected that money. And there's a variety of programs out there, both for American children within each of our states, but also internationally.
Okay, thank you. And could I just ask, I jotted this down, I want to make sure I got it right. You said it was called High Impact, funded or backed by the Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs?
Yes, it's referred to as WASP at the time, but they've since owned other, there's different names. We are always trying to chase the names because they are changed.
Right.
One LLC is closed and another is opened.
Sounds like a shell game. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. Yes.
There is a definition of what a treatment center is in the bill.
Right, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. That's helpful.
Okay, I think Rep. Wolford?
Did you say that this bill keeps companies like this from picking people up in the middle of the night?
Yes. I think it's that they can't do it between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, thank you again for being here, and thank you again for your bravery, and please reach out to us if there's anything else we can do to help you out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have a card to read in. Jennifer Newton from 1111 Media Impact is in support of the bill. We thank you for that. Okay, now we're going to take some votes. Rep. Fox moves to vote to adopt an H1 substitute on House Bill 5514. Will the clerk please take the roll?
On the motion to adopt the substitute for House Bill 5514, Chair Schmaltz.
Yes.
Representatives Wozniak.
Yeah.
Fox.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Pavlov.
Yes.
Wolford.
Yes.
Young. Burns.
Yes.
Reinings.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, no nays, no pass. The motion prevails.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The vote has passed, and the H1 substitute on House Bill 5514 has been adopted. Rep. Wozniak moves to vote to adopt an H1 substitute on House Bill 4954. This substitute clarifies the bill by replacing medical examiner with medical examiner investigator. Will the clerk please call the roll?
On the motion to adopt the substitute for House Bill 4954, Chair Schmaltz.
Yes.
Representatives Wozniak.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Pavlov.
Yes.
Wolford.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Reingens.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, no nays, no pass. The motion prevails.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The vote has passed, and the H1 substitute on House Bill 4954 has been adopted. Rep. Johnson moves to report House Bill 4954 as substitute H1 to the Committee on Rules. Will the clerk please call the roll?
On the motion to report to the Committee on Rules, Chair Schmaltz.
Yes.
Representatives Wozniak.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Pavlov.
Yes.
Wolford.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Reingens.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, no nays, no pass. The motion prevails.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The vote has passed, and House Bill 4954 is reported to the floor with recommendation that it be referred to the Committee on Rules. We have Ryan Furwins Bliss on a card supporting the bill. We thank you for that card from the Michigan College Access Network. Rep. Wolford moves to excuse absent members without objection, so ordered. Thank you. There being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.